She will not tell you she is testing you. She will not announce that this moment, right now, is a crucible for your desirability. She will smile, speak casually, maybe even laugh in a way that seems harmless. And yet, beneath her gaze, she is gathering intelligence on you like a spy. Machiavelli would call this the invisible battlefield, where the ruler who survives is the one who anticipates treachery before it is declared. In the realm of seduction, you are that ruler, and she is the potential ally who is also probing for weakness. A single crack in your armor is enough for her instincts to judge you unfit to lead her desire. If you fail here, you don't just lose her attraction. You become another name in her mental archive of forgettable men. But if you succeed, if you turn the test back on her, you will do more than survive. You will dominate her perception, lodge yourself in her mind as a figure she cannot categorize or predict, and force her to chase you to understand you. This is the Machiavellian promise, to transform every test into an opportunity to elevate your power. Machiavelli understood that power is never given, it is seized, and it is maintained through mastery of perception. In The Prince, he writes that rulers must not only be strong, but be seen as strong, even in moments of uncertainty. Your romantic encounters are no different. A woman's tests are not random. They are instinctual probes to answer a primal question. Are you the kind of man who can withstand the storms of her nature without losing his command? If your answer is anything less than an unshakable yes, she will sense it immediately. The core romantic pain that this script addresses is this: men crumble under pressure when faced with subtle female tests because they interpret them as attacks rather than opportunities. They feel exposed, judged, and desperate to win approval, which leads to the exact behaviors that disqualify them. The single thesis here is simple but absolute. Every silent test is a gift-wrapped chance to deepen her fascination, but only if you respond with Machiavellian frame control that flips the power dynamic back in your favor. The powerful promise is that once you master this, you will no longer fear these moments. You will welcome them, knowing they are the fastest path to commanding her long-term desire. Now we step into the first of 5 escalating scenarios, each revealing a different dimension of this truth. Scenario 1 is deceptively mild, the casual insult disguised as playfulness. You are at a bar, standing close enough for her perfume to drift into your senses, when she smirks and says, "You're not really my type, but you're fun to talk to." Her tone is light, her eyes playful, but in that moment you feel the weight of judgment. This is the hidden test. Evolutionarily, she is assessing whether you will bend your identity to win her favor, or whether you are so rooted in your own value that her words bounce off you like arrows against steel. The fear driving her is that of pairing with a man whose confidence is conditional, one who withers when confronted with disapproval. The desire beneath that fear is to find a man whose self-worth is independent of her validation, because such a man can protect her psychologically and socially from the chaos of life. The average man responds with a nervous laugh, a protest, or a pleading question like, "What do you mean, I'm not your type?" This is the weak response, and it collapses for a reason I'll dissect next. The weak response begins the moment he takes her words at face value and seeks to repair them. By laughing nervously or asking for clarification, he signals that her opinion has weight over his self-definition. This reaction instantly shifts the frame. He is no longer the man she's evaluating. He is the man scrambling to be re-evaluated in a more favorable light. Psychologically, this is catastrophic. Her subconscious reads his behavior as a confession of dependence. His confidence exists only when she affirms it. The chain reaction is swift. First, the frame collapses. She becomes the one dictating terms. Second, her attraction triggers invert. What once might have been curiosity now turns into mild contempt. Third, she files him into the safe but unexciting category, the realm of men who pose no challenge to her emotional world. Even if she smiles and continues talking, her deeper instincts are already steering her toward disengagement. In Machiavellian terms, he has just surrendered the fortress without a siege, letting her forces march in unopposed. The power response is radically different. When she says, "You're not really my type, but you're fun to talk to," you hold her gaze for a second longer than is comfortable, then smile faintly as though you've just been reminded of a private joke. You lean back slightly, take a sip of your drink, and respond with something like, "Good. I'd hate to be predictable." The sub-communication here is layered. First, you refuse to take her bait. You do not defend, explain, or retaliate. Second, you subtly imply that her approval was never your goal. In fact, you reframe her comment as a sign you are operating outside her usual experience. Third, you turn the spotlight back on her. Your calm amusement forces her to wonder why her attempt to define you failed. This is pure Machiavellian frame control. You do not oppose her directly, because opposition acknowledges her authority. Instead, you absorb the test, twist its meaning, and hand it back to her in a form that increases your perceived power. The psychological dominance of this response lies in its refusal to be categorized. Most men react predictably to rejection cues, either by overcompensating or retreating. Your response introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is magnetic. In her mind, you have just proven you are not swayed by momentary judgments. Your value exists independently of her perception. This demonstrates pre-selection, because only men accustomed to female attention can remain so unaffected. It signals high value, because it suggests your attention is something she must earn. And it cements frame control, because you dictate the emotional tone of the exchange rather than following hers. The shift in her perception is immediate. In the moment, she feels a flicker of curiosity, laced with irritation. Her attempt to measure you has failed, and humans are wired to resolve uncertainty. She becomes slightly more invested, leaning in just a fraction, asking a follow-up question that seeks to place you again. Over the next hours or days, her mind replays the scene. Why didn't you react like everyone else? Did you not care about her opinion? Or were you subtly challenging her to raise her standards? This question gnaws at her, converting mild interest into sustained fascination. You have inverted the test, turning her from judge into petitioner without ever confronting her directly. In Machiavellian strategy, this is the essence of ruling hearts. You create the need for your approval without ever admitting you desire theirs. Now we escalate into scenario 2, the deliberate delay in response. She texts you after a date, asking a casual question. You see the message instantly, but this moment is not about logistics. It is about timing as a display of power. The hidden test here is primal. Will you leap to answer, signaling that your life pauses for her? Or will you respond on your own time, showing that you remain the center of your own orbit? The scenario setup begins with her sending you a short, seemingly innocent message. Had fun tonight. Did you get home okay? On the surface, it reads as warm and caring, but beneath it lies an unspoken measurement of your self-governance. Her instincts are probing to see whether your world collapses into hers the moment she reaches out. The environment is deceptively calm late at night. Maybe you're still winding down with the faint hum of the city outside your window. The evolutionary psychology at play is ancient. A woman's safety historically depended on pairing with a man who was not easily pulled off his purpose, who could maintain focus on survival even in moments of intimacy. When she sends that message, she is unconsciously testing whether you will prioritize her stimulus over your own rhythm. The fear she carries is of a man who has no inner compass, who becomes available at the cost of his own mission. The desire hidden inside that fear is for a man whose value is so deeply rooted that his attention feels scarce and deliberate. This is the invisible battlefield Machiavelli would recognize. She is not openly challenging your throne, but she is circling its walls, looking for signs of an unguarded gate. The weak response is immediate reply. Yeah, just got home. had fun too, sent within seconds of her text appearing. In that moment, you may think you're signaling interest and politeness, but the psychological effect is the opposite. She reads your instant reaction as evidence that her attention dictates your pace. This creates a subconscious demotion in status. You are no longer the man she steps into the world of. You are the man who is already waiting for her arrival. The chain reaction begins with a frame collapse. You've silently confirmed that she has priority access to your mental space at all times. This lowers your perceived scarcity, which is one of the most potent triggers of attraction. Once scarcity drops, so does the perception of value, because humans assign worth based on difficulty of access. The final nail is that you've demonstrated emotional predictability. Machiavelli warns against being too easily read, for it allows others to manipulate you with precision. The moment she can forecast your behavior with accuracy, the air of mystery vanishes, and with it, a portion of her desire. The power response is to delay not out of game playing, but out of authentic priority alignment. You see her message, note it, and return to whatever you are doing. Perhaps finishing a chapter of a book, wrapping up a late-night project, or simply enjoying your own thoughts in solitude. An hour passes, maybe two. Then you respond with concise warmth. Made it back. Tonight was interesting. The delay reframes the interaction entirely. Instead of showing that her ping immediately commandeers your attention, you demonstrate that you live within a self-directed structure. The brevity of your reply forces her to lean forward mentally. What did you mean by interesting? Why didn't you elaborate? This aligns perfectly with Machiavelli's counsel on strategic ambiguity. Reveal enough to maintain connection, but never so much that you lose the advantage of uncertainty. Your timing shows pre-selection. You have other demands, other focuses. It projects high value. You are a man whose time is rationed according to internal logic, not external pulls. And it locks the frame. You are the fixed point. As she orbits you, the shift in her perception begins subtly. There is a pause in her mind where she considers why you didn't respond right away. This isn't irritation. It's the spark of tension, the same tension that fuels attraction. She begins to imagine what you might have been doing that was more important than answering her instantly. In the days that follow, this delay becomes part of your aura. She perceives you as someone who moves on his own schedule, who cannot be hurried, and who therefore must have a life rich enough to command his attention fully. This makes her desire your attention more fiercely, because it is not easily obtained. You have flipped the test. Instead of proving you are available, you have proven you are selective, and that selectiveness is now the challenge she feels compelled to meet. Scenario 3. The public social challenge. You are with her in a group setting, laughter and conversation flowing, when she playfully questions your story in front of others. Wait, is that really what happened, or are you exaggerating? On the surface, it's harmless banter, but underneath it is a stress test of your status in the social hierarchy. The scenario setup begins in a warm, lively atmosphere, perhaps a dimly lit lounge with soft amber lights spilling over the table, glasses clinking, voices overlapping in a low roar of conversation. You're telling a story, painting the scene with deliberate pacing, and the group is leaning in, riding the rhythm of your words. Then, with a mischievous smirk, she cuts in. Wait, is that really what happened, or are you exaggerating? Her tone is playful, her eyes darting to the others, almost inviting them to share in the joke. This is the hidden test. It is not just about the story. It is a probe into your social resilience. Evolutionarily, public interactions carry far greater weight in the subconscious mind because social status was once directly tied to survival. If you could not command respect and maintain face in a group, you risked being marginalized and losing access to resources. Her challenge is designed to see whether you crumble under public scrutiny or remain unshaken. The fear that drives this test is of a man whose confidence is brittle, a man who projects strength in private but folds under the gaze of others. The desire hidden within that fear is for a leader who can hold his ground in the marketplace of social perception, someone whose composure under pressure reflects deep-rooted authority. The weak response is defensiveness. No, I'm telling the truth. Or overcompensation, where the man doubles down aggressively in an attempt to reclaim the spotlight. Both reactions are equally destructive. Defensiveness communicates that her words hit their mark and destabilized you. Overcompensation signals insecurity, as though you must overwhelm the challenge to erase it. Psychologically, the group senses this shift immediately. The frame collapses because you've now made her the arbiter of your credibility. By letting her question dictate your emotional reaction, you've ceded the role of storyteller and taken on the role of defendant. The next step in the chain reaction is subtle but lethal. The audience's attention drifts toward her, and their alignment with you weakens. Even if they do not consciously register it, they have witnessed a transfer of social gravity. In Machiavelli's terms, this is the danger of losing control of appearances. Once the perception of strength falters, it invites further challenges. The power response is effortless reframing. When she asks, "Is that really what happened, or are you exaggerating?" you pause just enough for the group to register the beat, then smile and say, "Of course I'm exaggerating. Truth is boring." Your tone is amused, not defensive. You've just absorbed her challenge and spun it into a self-aware joke that expands your control over the room. The sub-communication is devastatingly effective. First, you signal that you are untouchable. Her jab did not unsettle you, but instead gave you material to amplify your own charisma. Second, you maintain leadership of the story. You decide how it evolves, and you decide the emotional tone. Third, you subtly place her as a participant in your narrative, rather than the one steering it. This reflects Machiavelli's principle that the appearance of control is often more important than control itself. You do not need to disprove her. You only need to keep the spotlight where you want it. The shift in her perception is instant and twofold. In the moment, she feels a flash of intrigue, because her attempt to destabilize you has instead strengthened your presence. There is a microsecond of recalibration. Her subconscious reassigns you from possible equal to probable leader. Over the long term, this moment becomes a mental anchor for her. She now sees you as someone who can hold command in public, which directly translates into the deeper evolutionary signal of being able to protect her socially. In her private thoughts, she replays how easily you turn potential embarrassment into humor, and how the group seemed even more engaged afterward. The test she set has been inverted, and now she's the one subtly competing for your validation. Scenario 4. The withdrawal of warmth. After days or weeks of playful connection, she suddenly becomes cool, slower to respond, and less affectionate in her tone. The silence is not accidental. It is a deliberate retreat to see if you will chase. This is the emotional equivalent of pulling away in a negotiation to test the other side as eagerness. The scenario setup begins with a sudden change in the emotional temperature. Just a few days ago, her messages were peppered with playful teasing, quick replies, and little sparks of warmth that made each exchange feel alive. Now, her texts are short, responses delayed, her tone flat and functional. In person, she feels more distant. Her eyes flicker past you more often. Her body language is less open, her laughter less frequent. There is no dramatic conflict, no explicit reason given for the shift. This is the hidden test. On a primal level, she is assessing whether your desire for her is strong enough to pull you off your own axis, whether you will abandon your internal structure to chase her approval when it is withdrawn. Evolutionarily, this traces back to a survival filter, a man who becomes destabilized when resources, emotional or physical, are scarce, is a liability. The fear behind this test is that you are dependent on her validation to sustain your confidence, which would make you vulnerable to manipulation by her or by others. The desire beneath the fear is for a man who remains self-directed regardless of emotional climate. A man who is not only unaffected by temporary withdrawal, but can even subtly turn it to his advantage. The weak response is predictable pursuit. The average man, sensing her withdrawal, instinctively increases his investment, sending more messages, asking if something is wrong, offering reassurances, or even trying to recreate the earlier warmth by reminiscing about shared moments. Each of these actions communicates the same underlying truth. Her shift in energy has power over you. The psychological chain reaction begins with the collapse of your frame. Her coolness now dictates the tempo of your interaction. This inversion of control signals to her subconscious that she is the prize and you are the supplicant. Once this dynamic takes root, attraction begins to erode. Because scarcity is inverted, she becomes the high-value entity, you the readily available resource. In Machiavelli's political terms, this is the equivalent of a ruler who, upon losing tribute from an ally, sends gifts and pleasantries to coax it back, revealing dependence and emboldening the other party to withhold more. The power response is strategic non-reactivity, coupled with subtle reallocation of attention. When she cools, you do not confront or chase. Instead, you match the new pace, not with coldness, but with composure. Your responses become as measured as hers, and in the space that opens, you invest more visibly in other aspects of your life: social outings, creative projects, physical training. You allow her to see, through subtle cues or shared environments, that your world remains full and vibrant regardless of her warmth. Then, after some time, you initiate a small, unexpected moment of connection, a brief, charming message, or a confident invitation to something you are already doing. This pattern does two things. It denies her the satisfaction of seeing you destabilized, and it reframes the withdrawal as her loss rather than yours. Machiavelli would call this maintaining the perception of strength during scarcity, ensuring that even in the absence of her emotional tribute, your sovereignty remains intact. The shift in her perception emerges gradually. At first, she notices that her withdrawal has not drawn you closer. It has, if anything, created a space in which she feels your absence more acutely. Then comes the confusion. Most men would have chased, so why didn't you? This confusion transforms into curiosity, and curiosity into a low-grade tension that simmers beneath your interactions. Over the longer term, she reassesses you as someone who cannot be manipulated through emotional availability. A man whose value is anchored so deeply that it does not require constant reinforcement. Now, when she chooses to give warmth again, it feels like her decision, not your demand, which paradoxically makes her want to give it more often. You have flipped the test. Instead of being the one tested for neediness, you have become the one subtly testing her capacity to hold your attention. Scenario 5. The temptation lure. She introduces a rival, whether through a story, a social media post, or a pointed mention of another man who has shown interest to see how you react. The test here is not about jealousy itself, but about whether you will guard your position with insecurity or with sovereignty. The scenario setup unfolds with calculated subtlety. You are mid-conversation when she casually drops a reference to another man, perhaps a coworker who is always making her laugh, or a friend who asked her to grab a coffee. Her tone is deliberately neutral, even a little bored, as if the mention is incidental, but her eyes register every micro-reaction you give. Sometimes this comes in the form of a social media post with another man in the frame, knowing you will see it. The setting may be private, but the stakes are public in her mind, because this is a status test masquerading as casual dialogue. Evolutionarily, women are wired to seek partners who can withstand competitive tension without collapsing. The hidden fear behind this test is of a man who becomes rattled by the mere suggestion of competition, one who reacts with jealousy so overt it reveals fragility. The hidden desire is for a man who can meet the implication of rivalry with an unshakable aura, signaling that his value is not threatened by the presence of others. In Machiavelli's playbook, this is akin to a ruler confronted by a neighboring power. The strongest leaders do not bluster or panic, they act as though their throne is immovable. The weak response is to bristle. "Who's this guy?" Or to slip in passive-aggressive comments, or even to withdraw sulkily, hoping she notices your displeasure. Each of these moves announces the same vulnerability. You perceive her attention as unstable, and you believe it can be stolen. The psychological collapse begins with this admission of insecurity, even if unspoken. Once she detects that the idea of another man shakes you, she unconsciously marks you as lower in the hierarchy of options. The frame flips, she becomes the one choosing between suitors, and you become the one competing for her, even if there is no real rival. Attraction erodes because the dynamic is shifted from mutual selection to her evaluation of your resilience under pressure. Machiavelli warned that overreaction to perceived threats signals weakness, inviting further tests and emboldening challengers. In seduction, the same principle holds. The moment you show that competition destabilizes you, you invite more of it. The power response is to absorb the mention without a ripple of insecurity, reframing it with calm intrigue or playful dismissal. If she says, "A guy from work keeps asking me out," you might smirk slightly and reply, "I can see why he would," before smoothly steering the conversation into another direction of your choosing. This does several things at once. First, it acknowledges the existence of the other man without granting him status in your mind. Second, it subtly frames her desirability as something you already take for granted, not something you must defend. Third, it shows that you control the conversational frame. You decide what is worth dwelling on. This is pure Machiavellian strategy. Maintain the image of an unthreatened sovereign, because the perception of stability is as powerful as stability itself. Your unbothered demeanor signals pre-selection. Men who are secure in their value have already navigated attention from multiple women and rivals without desperation. It demonstrates high value. You are not competing for her. She is maintaining her place with you. And it keeps your frame unassailable. Her test cannot penetrate the armor of your self-possession. The shift in her perception is almost paradoxical. Initially, she may feel a flicker of disappointment that her attempt to provoke jealousy failed. But beneath that, there is a surge of respect and renewed intrigue. You did not flinch, which forces her to reconsider the balance of power. Perhaps she is the one being tested. Over time, this single moment becomes a proof point in her mental model of you. You are not the man who needs to guard his position frantically. You are the man whose position is so solid that others merely orbit it. This turns the presence of rivals into a non-factor and elevates you above the realm of competition. In her private thoughts, this breeds a quiet obsession. What is it about you that makes you so unshakable? And the more she wonders, the more the dynamic tilts in your favor. Now we move to the practical arsenal, a consolidation of the power responses across all 5 scenarios. When faced with playful insult, you reframed it with calm amusement. When tested by delayed communication, you responded on your own time with deliberate brevity. In the public challenge, you turned scrutiny into humor and expanded your control over the room. When warmth was withdrawn, you matched pace without chasing, investing your attention elsewhere until you re-engaged on your terms. And when tempted with rivalry, you acknowledged without insecurity, maintaining the image of an immovable center. Across each test, the Machiavellian constant was the same. You never let her dictate your emotional tempo, and you never surrendered the frame. The conclusion is both a closing and an opening. The unspoken truth of all these scenarios is that women are not trying to destroy your confidence when they test you. They are trying to locate it. They want to know whether you are the man whose value survives storms. Machiavelli would tell you that the art of power lies not in never being tested, but in turning every test into an arena where your strength becomes undeniable. In attraction, as in politics, perception is reality. Master the perception, and you master the game. If you found yourself in these scenarios and recognize the weaker responses as your own, that is not a death sentence. It is a starting point. The next move is yours, and the next test will come. And when it does, you will not just pass it, you will flip it. And in doing so, you will claim a kind of sovereignty that cannot be faked and cannot be taken.